just wanted to find out if you were willing.
Farming is a family-run business,
More, Bob.
and it is very hard to break tradition.
We're not perfect, we've got flaws, but we're doing everything we can to be the best stewards of the earth God's given us. Because there's a lot of things in this world you can do without, but you can't do without food.
Hi, my name is Kadine Anckle, and I am on the selection committee for the Brand Storytelling 2025. And I am here with writer, director, and editor of From the Heartland, Matt Coddaire.
Hi, Kadine. Thanks for having me.
I'm super pumped to be here with you. From the Heartland was amazing. So congratulations, amazing work. What's it like to make something like that?
It's kind of sad that it's over, honestly. Me and my partner on the project, because it was just two of us, we were going out to this farm in southwestern Minnesota for 2.5 years. And, part of me thinks we were going out there a lot of times just because we loved it so much. It was, kind of a different experience from our everyday life, here in suburbia in Colorado. And so when those revisitations sort of ceased, it was something that I had kind of missed. I have to go figure out what my next, Minnesotan farm film project is going to be now.
Yeah, and for those of you watching, so From the Heartland is about, farmers in Luverne, Minnesota. Did I say that correctly?
That's correct.
And, they went through a terrible flood in 2014, and they basically have to figure out how they're going to move forward to create, a sustainable life for themselves and for their agriculture practice. Does that kind of sum it up in a way without not telling too much?
Yeah, that's exactly it. Actually, and it also taps into the reliance that the community has on agriculture, and how many lives are dependent on the success of that sector.
Yeah. So then talk to me about how you even got involved with this family. How do you pronounce their names? Feikema?
Feikema.
Mess that one up. Feikema.
Yeah. So I had met Shawn through some work with a biofuels company located here in Colorado called Gevo. They're also big supporters of the film as well. And I saw Shawn speak in front of some other farmers in the region, telling his story about why they had made the switch to more sustainable agriculture practices. And I could tell right then and there that he was passionate, well-spoken. He's got a big operation. It's a beautiful landscape. I mean, all the boxes were getting checked. And so we had actually been assigned by that biofuels company to go back and just capture some B-roll of his sustainable agriculture practice. And while we were there that first time, my partner, Andrew Bidlin, and I decided to stay out for an extra, it was like 3 or 4 days beyond, what their budget had sent us out there for. And so in that time, I had spoke to Shawn, the farmer in the film, and said, what's your story? What made you, go with the practices that you have on the farm today? And that passion came out again. And, it just sort of happened organically, where each time we went out, we got a little bit more, the pieces started falling together. I didn't grow up in agriculture, so I didn't really know much of the past and all the background of, of course, everybody knows about the Dust Bowl, but not like the really nuances of it all. And then the farm crisis of the 1980s. And they all seemed like really important parts of the story to tell, because it all goes into why farmers are making, the decisions on their farm that they're making today. So, there was one final trip where we sort of, most of the film was edited, and there was like, okay, we need these little segues. We went out one last time and captured what we needed to. And that was, probably 2.5 years after we had started. So.
Wow, 2.5 years for the whole project. So one project led to this, to From the Heartland, right? Like a separate project led to the creation of it. Because like, who are you? We're so interested in like knowing more and more. But 2 years, 2.5 years, that's a long time for a branded project.
Well, yeah, and I think that that's probably because it wasn't like there wasn't a directive from the beginning. It was like, and because the footage that we were going out to capture was so seasonal, right? It was like go out for the harvest and then wait for anything to happen until, they plant the next year, and then, go out and get this community event. And so you know, it was seeded in the beginning by that biofuels company, Gevo, but the idea to make the film just kind of happened between, us and the farmer. And when you find somebody that really, wants to tell their story, I think as filmmakers, like, it really gets you excited, because that like cuts out half the work,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it kind of all naturally just happened, right? Like there are these
Yeah.
compelling characters who are kind of up against this behemoth kind of situation in their community and in their industry, right?
Yeah.
Um, I I really love the way that you captured the small town and like that, like, the name of the film is From the Heartland. And if you really do sense that I'm not from an agricultural background at all, right? I grew up in a small town in Pennsylvania, here in the United States before, after coming from Panama. But I really understood what you were capturing. I really understood what I was seeing. Like, oh, this is America. These are farmers. This is how it works. And so, like, was that just kind of like, this is naturally it, or was there kind of a perspective or a lens that you came in with as an outsider as well that helped you make that happen?
I mean, I think if I had grown up in a town like that and kind of knew, it wouldn't have taken me so long to realize that that was something we needed to capture and a part of the story that we needed to tell. Because, it probably wasn't until like halfway through production that the light bulb kind of went off on one of our drives home, where it was like, you know what, I think this is really about how, the town that is so Americana, right? Like, is solely reliant on agriculture, and that was the story that we got from everybody, from the farmer, from the seed dealer, from, the the economist in town. Like, they everybody there knows why those towns exist. And it's tough, because the farm consolidation is a big reason for a lot of those smaller towns kind of ceasing to exist. Luverne isn't going to be one of those towns, but there are others that, are 30 minutes, 40 minutes away, that are, one general store, the school's closed down, the church is gone. And it's because, a lot of the families close down their farms. They lease out the land to other farmers. Thankfully, there's not a lot of like corporate farming going on in that area. But when that happens, the families sort of dissipate. And farmers like the Feikemas, they don't hold on to that land because they're just leasing it from the owners. But with the people not there, those towns can't exist anymore. And so I don't know, there was sort of this realization about the reliance on these farms continuing to operate in order to support, not in order to support, but like and therefore supporting the towns that they exist within.
Yeah.
I guess.
And that, like you said, they're so reliant on it, on agriculture, and agriculture is such a almost like old school type of approach, right? As we look at, like, we now live in 2024, and it's, not what necessarily is happening to this day there, right? So it's more like these guys went off to college and then they were like, I've got to come home and take care of this for my family and to continue this tradition. And so I'm kind of curious how you were able, because there's a story of tradition and innovation, right?
Yeah.
Not only in the families, but also in the approach. And so I'm kind of wondering how you wrapped your head around that for this project.
Yeah, I mean that ended up being like the ultimate crux, right? Was these farming practices that are handed down from generation to generation, that are there, because of things like the Dust Bowl and the farm crisis of the 1980s. Like these operations are only like, they're doing everything that they can to just hang on to the farm and keep their family name, like in operation. And so to, you know, try these new farming practices and to take risks, kind of is a big gamble, and it goes against everything that their, parents and grandparents had taught them. And, that those are the generations that have suffered, that have seen their neighbors, farms go under and stuff. So, that was, another sort of like late realization, same as, the town reliance on the sector. But again, another super imperative part to tell, I think, because it does, at least for me, like it was kind of like an aha moment when we realized that, this is a big reason why farms aren't, you know, adopting these brand new practices where they're reducing their tillage and they're going all organic and all this stuff. It's like that's a big risk to ask a farm whose, grandfather barely made it through the, 1980s farm crisis. So yeah, it was, it's my favorite part of the job, as I'm sure it is with you, like getting to learn these, different parts of, society and how certain, regions like operate. And yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, one of the experiences that I've often had is you go in, like you said, with an idea. Okay, this is what we're talking about. And you know that you're going to learn and you're going to, as the story kind of evolves and you meet people and move through it. But what's something that I've really taken away is that, the story tells you how it wants to be told, if that makes sense, or what it
Yeah.
should be. And I find that to be one of my favorite parts of a project. And that can be difficult sometimes on like a branded project, right? Where there are different stakeholders. And I know that you guys kind of came in through it, or came into branding through kind of from a different angle. So that
Yeah.
allowed for the expansion of your storytelling. And what really drives it for me in this film particularly is the fact that it is about, that the climate is changing, right? And it is about sustainability. And with people who normally you would think don't think that way, right? So talk to
Yeah.
me about just experiencing that through their eyes. Like, we're
Yeah.
sitting, whatever, we're used to that. But
Yeah.
what was it like to experience that on a real level?
Yeah. It was pretty deliberate to kind of stay away from that language with this film, because for me, I had worked on a few films, that talked about regenerative agriculture and sustainable farming and stuff like that. And it felt like we were just talking to the liberal crowd. We were talking to farmers who maybe already are all organic, and, it wasn't using the language, it wasn't using the same, you know, aspects about generations and, you know, um, community and stuff like that. So when we went into this film, Shawn is a very conventional farmer, right? He didn't adopt these practices for the environment. He did it because it helped him, you know, and that didn't matter to me, right? Like, side effect is you're sequestering carbon in the ground, and that's great. Like, do it for you, and we can benefit from it, like how we observe those practices working within our system. And so wanting to talk to those more conventional farmers, you know, we, like I said, we were very deliberate, especially with the soil scientist, because she, her language is that of like climate change and, more extreme weather and everything. And it's really funny because in the film, it's actually the the older generation who starts talking about like, we didn't see these kind of storms back in the day. And of course he would never, like equate that
Right.
to
Put the
climate
two. Yeah.
change, but he was the one that sort of like made the announcement within the film. Um and he was great. He was such a great character in the film to talk about like the older generations and stuff like that. But it's like their beliefs are theirs and ours are ours. And however you want to look at what's happening in the world is totally fine, I think. And if they want to make these changes because they want to reduce soil erosion, that's great. We want to, or we're hoping for other people to adopt these changes because it's going to sequester carbon. Like, to each their own. It doesn't really matter. But to go back to your question, it was sort of like towing the line on how we're going to discuss the
You did
topic.
it really
For
well,
sure.
though. I
Thank
honestly
you.
like it's because
Thanks.
like I'm watching it and I'm like, right. Yes. And knowing, and at least for me in the back of my mind, knowing like that's not something that they're thinking about or they're not seeing it from that perspective.
Yeah.
Right. But and it was just like, I think you did a beautiful job of just expressing like that they were just going after it for their livelihood,
Right.
and with the aid of the soil scientists, right. To like
Yep.
provide more of this, more elaborate description of it. I thought that was a really smart a choice.
Thanks.
Was that how talk to me about how she came in, by the way.
Jody is a hero. She came in because after our first visit, I was listening to a podcast. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but I didn't know anything about soil health so I was just kind of doing my research, and it's a 10-hour drive back and forth. So we were, kind of killing two birds with one stone. And she came on and she was super well spoken. And so I just reached out in an email. And then I asked Shawn, and I was like, hey, I think we should probably get a scientific slash professional voice in this story. What do you think? Have you heard of Jody DeYoung Hughes? And what do you think about bringing her in? And he was like, it's her. It's got to be her. She is the person to do this. So yeah, and she is one of my new favorite people
She's
in
cool.
the world. She's so great. Yeah. And
Super
her,
smart.
yeah, she's super smart, super down to earth. And when you drag her out to a field at 4 a.m, she brings donuts. So yeah,
Amazing. Amazing.
she's
Yeah, no,
awesome.
like I really loved that balance. And obviously as like, there was a shot that I thought was so beautiful. It was when you do the I think it was like 2 month growths of the plants or something like that. And it's like
Yeah.
right in between, you see the crop coming up and then I don't know, the rake thing comes in.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know my industrial term, so
Yeah.
forgive,
Some
but
front loader. I don't know what it is either,
the
honestly.
machine shows up.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
And it was just such a beautiful, I think you did such a wonderful job of, that storytelling, right? Of just cinematography and like visual, beauty, and also the branding, right? Like it was
Yeah.
all there and it was seamless and it didn't feel forced. And I wonder, did you really think about that or did it just naturally come to you?
It wasn't hard with the Feikema farm because like not only was every piece of machinery John Deere like green, but everything that was in their archival footage and photos was all John Deere. That's all they've ever run for 3 generations. So and then their involvement actually came from a conversation that Shawn had with his contact there. And Shawn is a farmer that they work with pretty closely in regards to, working with new equipment and giving them test results and stuff. Like Shawn's a numbers guy. He tracks everything on his farm and in his fields. And so anyway, it was pretty organic for that conversation to happen. He put me in touch with his guy, and everybody was excited about, I think the presentation of agriculture in the way that it was in this film, because it kind of did tell the whole story. And so, yeah, they came on board and put their name on the thing, and it helps immensely, I think, when you get a recognizable brand like John Deere when you're working in the agricultural space. So I'm super thankful for their involvement, and yeah, couldn't
Yeah,
be.
no, I thought, like, from a producing, directing, storytelling perspective, as I watched, sometimes when you watch these kinds of storyteller, or rather these kinds of videos, right, these films, sometimes the brand, it's always interesting rather to see the way that the brand is inserted, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And some people do a really great job at it, and some people you're like, oof, that feels different, you
yeah,
know? And so for me as a viewer, it really just felt very seamless, and of the world. And like you said, it was, right? It was just the natural, that's the equipment that they use. And even there was this one shot that I was like, oh, this is awesome. Like, I wonder if that's just naturally it, which was, I think it's Shawn, he's out in the field and he's working, and it's like at night, and he's in some big John Deere tractor thing, and
yeah.
the deer itself is on the side and it's lit up. And I'm like, is that just naturally how that happened? Because
Yeah.
that was excellent.
I mean, we only used lights for the interviews. Everything else was just all natural light.
That's
And
amazing.
I mean, when you shoot for 2.5 years, you've got a lot of footage to sift through, but you can also, like, yeah, just, you know, uh, I don't know, use the best of the best. And I mean, Andrew did an amazing job, and we spent many hours out in those fields with Shawn and his family and stuff. So, and I mean, it's such a beautiful scene,
Yeah.
like being out in
Talk
those
to me about
fields.
just like the backdrop that you had, right? That
Yeah.
beautiful, like Midwestern, just fields and fields of it. Like, what's it like as a director to have such a beautiful canvas?
I mean, that was kind of always like one of those boxes, that you're looking to get checked. It's like, okay, do you have a passionate storyteller? Do you have access to the story? And do you have a beautiful scene? And it had all those in spades. So it was hard to shoot anything that wasn't beautiful out there. And it's
Mhm.
sad because there were so many scenes that did get left on the cutting room floor.
Always.
Um, like there's some shots in the credit roll that are, just there because I couldn't not include any of them. And we were out at night. He was, harvesting till like midnight. And, those tractors have just a crazy amount of lights on them. It looks like you're on a construction site, and they're just like mowing through this field, and there's all this like debris through the air, and so there's atmosphere, and it's amazing. It's going to be hard to yeah, to live up to that whenever the next project comes along, but
I think you'll
um,
figure it out. Something tells me
yeah.
you'll figure it out. I'm wondering, like, I noticed that, so you were kind of just like embedded with this family, and that like maybe I saw that some of the people from the family, the Feikemas, were also APs on the project. I thought that was really sweet. Like, how did that happen?
Well, they just did because not just Shawn, but Becky, his wife, and his brother, and everybody has had a helping hand in making this film, come together, right? And
Yeah.
that's in regards to like providing all the archival footage, to helping us put on the premiere in the town, which was like one of my favorite nights, like to this day. But Yeah, there's a small like quaint theater in Luverne, and we got to show it to the community, and they packed out a 450 person theater, and
That's awesome.
it was a really great reception. So,
Were you
um,
nervous showing them a
oh
film about
my, I was so nervous.
really?
Yeah. Well, yeah, because like, not growing up in agriculture, I'm
Hmm.
an outsider. And
Hmm.
and even some of the people that worked on the farm, like there were a couple brothers that would not even like anytime we came around with the cameras, they would exit the room. They'd be gone. And um after the film was over, I'm super nervous because it's not my story, it's their story. Did I tell it right? I don't know. And one of those brothers came up to me at the end of the film, and he was like, that was pretty cool, thanks man. And that was it, like
You're not gonna
super.
get too much.
Yeah, yeah. Super soft-spoken guy, and never heard him speak a word. And just the affirmation from him just, was a bow on the whole thing. So,
That's amazing. But I
yeah.
think that's kind of like of that world though, right? Like and at least in my mind, kind of like that Americana world, and farmers are kind of, don't not necessarily have that much to say, but more show,
Yeah.
right? Work and be, and that certainly comes across as well in your
I-
film. And
yeah.
I wonder, because I feel, we always kind of have you have to have an arc to tell the story, and you certainly go from this place of, it's kind of, at least for me, it felt like it a little bit like darker in the beginning, and it kind of goes into this more light, more hopeful place towards the end. Was that intentional? Did that happen? Am I imagining it?
No, yeah. So, I mean, we wanted to tee up the big event, right? With the flood. Um, but then I also wanted the film to like start organically. So it was tough. I had gone back and forth a little bit with that like darker open, and wondered if that was like the appropriate way to do it. Obviously it's still in there, so the 15-minute version doesn't have that, but I still like the 30. So, but it's yeah, I think, you just want people to sit around and see what that was all about,
Yeah,
right? It's the hook,
yeah.
I guess. So,
No, it's beautiful. I wonder, and if I already asked this, forgive me, but
you're good.
did you did you come in looking for, sometimes people have like a look, right? That their
Mm.
film has a look, and then and a feel, and an approach. Is that something that was just natural, or did you kind of already have this perspective coming in?
It was pretty natural on that one, honestly. There was a lot of ideas and approaches that we scrapped because they didn't feel right for the moment. Um, there the only one that I knew going into it was we did all this hard mounting to the tractor, and I knew during the planting that was how I wanted to portray it. And it was super fun. It Thankfully my camera made it through, but it was pretty risky at the same time. But it just provided for some like really unique footage.
What did you shoot on?
Red Komodo, I think it's sitting back there, and then Andrew has a raptor, a red or had a red raptor.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
then you were also editor on this project. So then you have to come back with all this footage and sit there and figure out how to build this story, right?
Yeah.
So what,
My Sorry, go ahead.
no, you go, you go.
Well, I was just gonna say my main gig is actually an editor. So
Oh,
editing commercial and documentaries like this for other people, but sitting at the desk 5 days a week, 9 to 5, it's like pretty exhausting. So you find any opportunity to get out there and you know, flex new muscles and explore, the filmmaking process and stuff. And I think,
sure.
you know, being a part of every part of the process helps you be better at every part of the process.
Mhm.
So I think it was really healthy for me, in getting out there and failing and like having understanding for it's really easy to play Monday morning quarterback when you're the editor and you're like, why didn't you get this?
Right.
You know? But when you get
Yeah.
out in the field, you're like, oh gosh, this is tough.
We have no time, it
Yeah,
looks
yeah.
like. All the things.
Exactly. So
No, I feel like it's a very complete and very well thought of film. Even in the beginning, right, with your opening credits, where you see the rooms of kind of just like kind of that they have been through something, right? They had an experience, and
that was
and then the water, and I thought that that was really beautiful. So how did that kind of come together, if you don't mind me asking?
yeah, I mean, I knew I wanted to create like a dramatic opening. Um, and I think
Because
I, what's that?
you wanted to create a dramatic opening, and I'm saying because
Well, I was gonna say we had been binging White Lotus, and I was like, okay, like I was really influenced by that style with
mm,
the wallpaper sliding and
hmm
stuff. And so like we brought a slider into this old abandoned home. And at first we didn't have permission. We were just driving around and looking for spots, found a spot, filmed there for about 2 hours, walked around the front of the building, saw one of those game cameras, if you've ever seen one of those, and kind of like uh had a moment of fear, and then a bright red pickup truck came racing down the driveway, and I had to go do some uh yeah
begging for
talk
some
my way out
forgiveness.
of it. But the funny thing is, like we were there without permission.
Right,
We're trespassing. That guy could have shot us and it would have been like legal for him.
right.
And
That's
and
scary.
yeah, it was scary. But I walked out, and I told him what we were doing and the film that we were making, and he was like, "That's great. Have at it. Stick around." And I was like, everybody that we've talked to really wants this story to be told.
That's
So
magical.
yeah,
That's
it was a
really
really, I
special.
mean, yeah, every time we ran into somebody new or interviewed someone, it was all affirmation that like we're spending our time wisely doing this. So
How beautiful to be in such alignment, not only with your project yourself, but also with just the community that it's about, right? That often doesn't happen. Often there's like there can be opposition in a story that, is emotional in that way, right? So
oh,
like that must have been a really amazing experience to be able to just be able to keep moving in alignment and forward in that way without, fearing, well, a little bit of fear
yeah.
of death, but not
A little bit. A
a
lot
little
of it in
bit, but
that
not a
moment.
full on, not a full on.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
that's cool. So
Yeah.
like, what do you, having had this experience now, what do you hope that your audiences take away from this film?
Um, well, so going into it, it was sort of twofold. It was having, the more conventional farmers be open to, you know, less traditional farming practices. Just try some stuff out. That was Shawn's big push from the beginning. And then from my perspective, I had always seen farming and farmers get thrown under the bus, right?
Sure.
And I think in producing the film, I have a lot more understand. Not that I was like ever doing that because I never knew enough to accuse anybody of something like that, but um, I hope that others that watch the film that maybe don't know much about farming have a little more grace and patience and
Sure.
understanding with agriculture and why, they're at where they're at today. So,
Yeah, no, that's great. And like, I think that's super important, right? Especially like when we were talking about earlier, like being from cities versus being from a town and not understanding each other's perspectives. And I think that this film does a really good job of doing that. Um, I'm wondering, kind of just like you as a director, like what's
mm,
your big takeaway from this experience?
my big takeaway from this experience, I mean, I guess, you know, I still text with Shawn and Becky like once a month. at least. He was just chatting to me the other day, and
That's
he's like, oh
amazing.
yeah, we'll be out there soon. I just love like forming these relationships with people in spaces that, you know, I wouldn't have otherwise experienced. I wouldn't know these people. I wouldn't know that lifestyle. And so, I mean, I really just want to continue to do that, you know, and meet new people and I don't know, I guess it seemed like with this project, like you were saying, sort of trying to create an understanding, right? To sort of like bridge that gap so that we can have like meaningful conversations. Like, I suppose that's like what I'm really after. And that was sort of like the realization, like, you know, why am I making this film? I have no idea. It's like a lot of time spent, you know, and is this really worth it monetarily? I don't know, but like it fills the cup. And why is that, you know? And Shawn, when he was texting with me just, you know, gosh, last Friday, he was like, yeah, I talked to a farmer whose parents switched their practices after watching the film. You know, it's like, oh,
Wow, that's
that's
huge.
huge.
That's
You know,
huge.
like I'm sure these people had considered it, but for them to pull the trigger, you know, after something that we, you know, it's Shawn's story and I'm just, you know, the conduit and
Sure.
but something that I had a, you know, help in getting the message out there like that,
Yeah.
that's pretty cool. That was really
That's
neat.
amazing. I mean, and I feel like as storytellers, right? Like I always tell us for me, it's always like if like one person can be impacted
Yeah.
by the story that I told and I did it, you know,
Yeah.
and if that's not such an affirmation, I don't know what is. I'm wondering, you know, the fact that this, you know, yes, it was picked up later by a brand because it was so seamlessly involved. I'm wondering though, just for people who, you know, for the brands that are out there and who sometimes are just like not sure about telling projects that they think that maybe their whole audience won't understand, you know, or can't relate to. What in your experience would you what would be your encouragement on taking that chance, especially having the result of the, you know, the support of the community and just an audience at large?
I mean, I think as storytellers and filmmakers, you know, you can't not. I think I was talking to somebody recently and I was like, you wouldn't ask a painter like why they paint, right? Like it's just a passion. And so if you find a story that, you know, feels like it needs to be told or you haven't seen be told, or if it's a new voice or new perspective, like go out and do it for yourself, you know? And that's kind of like that's kind of how it happened with this. It's like we, like I said at the top, like we just liked going out there. We just, you know, kept wanting to go out and, you know, cameras and lenses and drones, they're just toys, right? So like we just wanted to go play with our toys and, you know, we got to
How
tell
beautiful
a,
that we get to do that, right?
I know it's so cool. Like
Yeah.
it's a pretty cool career that we found ourselves in. And so, yeah, I mean, do it for do it for yourself. And then, you know, if other people latch onto it and want to hear that story, then, um, you know, even better. So I guess it's like that Rick Rubin like thing that's been going around. You heard this, how he's like, oh, don't make content for your audience, make it for yourself.
Yeah, I think it's a part of his book, which I'm currently reading.
Oh,
It's so
nice.
good. It's a really good book.
Perfect.
I think it's like the creative practice or something like that. I forget the name of it, but it's really special. And thank you for this very special conversation.
Yeah, of course.
I'm really excited that we got a chance to talk about your film, and you know, I hope that people keep watching and getting really excited and you know, inspired to trying something new, because you never know where it might lead. I don't know if there's anything else that you might want to say or that we missed in this conversation.
Nah, not at this time. I think you covered it, Katie. And thank you for having me. And I
Oh my God, it's
appreciate
been awesome. It's been really, really lovely chatting with you. And you know, looking forward to seeing you at Sundance maybe. So
all right.
thank you
Thanks,
so
Katie.
much.
All right, we'll see you.
See ya.